Ever get that feeling of pure anxiety when you step into an old Call of Duty Zombies map? That unshakable, gut-wrenching feeling? It's that mix of adrenaline and terror, like playing a horror game with your heart pounding in your chest. The older Call of Zombies maps didn't just challenge you, they stressed you out in ways modern zombies just don't. But what is it that makes those old maps so much scarier? And why did that anxiety, that raw fear, slowly fade away over time? I'm going to be chopping this video into 3 easily digestible slices. There's the atmosphere, the audio, and the difficulty. I believe these are the main reasons that make the older games truly special. So without further ado, let's dive into them. Let's start with the atmosphere. The original Call of Duty Zombies games were set during 2 of the most terrifying periods in history, World War II and the Cold War. For those who lived through it, it was a constant struggle for survival, and the tension is reflected in every corner of the game. You can see this in everything from the background to the weaponry. The guns, the environment, even the settings. Everything was designed to feel like you were in the middle of chaos, where life and death were a matter of seconds. Nocturne Toten, Verrückt, and others weren't just maps, they were pieces of history. Abandoned asylums, decaying bunkers, and eerie theaters. Each environment seemed to tell its own story. A world that has been ravaged, now overrun by the undead. Now let's talk about the graphics, or lack thereof. The visuals in these games were gloomy and cold, reflecting the bleak nature of the world they were set in. Being older titles, the graphics weren't cutting edge by today's standards, but that only added to the immersion. There was a certain grittiness to the way everything looked. Everything felt rough, unfinished. The textures were jagged, the features sharp and irregular. Everything looked a little off, like something wasn't quite right. Like the world itself was falling apart, much like the environment that you were trapped in. The color palette was dark, dominated by grays, blacks, and muted tones. This perfectly reflected the zombie-like nature of the world. It helped it feel unnatural, like you were playing through the remnants of a forgotten nightmare. And let's not forget about the lighting. It was almost non-existent. There was no bright, shining path guiding your way, just minimal light from flickering bulbs, moonlight seeping through the broken windows, and the occasional glow of zombie eyes as they closed in on you. The power was always limited, just like your options for survival. These dim lights added to the sense of unease, the feeling that something was always just lurking out of sight, the uncertainty of what was in the shadows, and the constant fear of being overwhelmed. This created an atmosphere of tension, and it never let up. But perhaps the most critical part of creating this terrifying atmosphere was the map design itself. The maps weren't just backdrops, they were carefully crafted nightmares. Let's break down a few of the main ones. The original map, Nocturne Toten, set the stage perfectly. A small, claustrophobic bunker with nowhere to hide and nowhere to run. You were trapped from the start, zombies coming relentlessly through every window and wall. The tight spaces made every moment tense, and every corner felt dangerous. Verrückt was genuinely terrifying. Set in an abandoned, twisted asylum, it took horror up a notch. The hallways were narrow, dark, and confusing, and made you feel really disoriented. Not to mention the start of the game splits your team into 2, which is really terrifying, especially when you're playing duos. It's also just a terrifying map, with lots of Easter eggs, like the dentist chair, making the atmosphere really eerie. Then came Shinonuma, a swampy nightmare that made you feel isolated and vulnerable. This map's foggy swamp and creaking huts felt something straight out of a horror movie. The randomness of the perk locations and the thick, murky atmosphere added a really unique twist to the gameplay. The eerie environment, combined with the zombies rising from the swamp waters, was enough to keep your anxiety constantly high. And finally, my favorite map, Darice, the Factory of Nightmares. This map introduced teleporters and a pack-a-munch machine, but even with these new features, the map stayed terrifyingly intense. Tight corridors, dark industrial rooms, and limited escape routes meant you constantly felt cornered. The gritty industrial atmosphere, with sparks flying and machinery humming, was unsettling in itself, adding yet another layer of fear. Each of these maps weren't just unique, they were purposely designed to amplify your anxiety. They felt confined, dangerous, and oppressive, reinforcing the feeling that you had no escape. Treyarch knew exactly what they were doing. They created spaces that don't just contain zombies, they contain your fears. The atmosphere would be nothing without the sound design, and man did they nail it. It's not just about the zombies growling, or the sound of doors creaking. It's the eerie soundscape that immerses you in the horror. Every little noise, every footstep, every wind howl. It's like the world itself is trying to swallow you whole. Let's start with the lack of music. Most games use music to guide you, to give you a sense of tension. But Call of Duty Zombies does something a little bit different. It doesn't have music. And that silence, well, it amplifies the fear. All you hear is the sound of your own footsteps, echoing the emptiness, and your heavy breathing as you try to figure out what's lurking around the corner. And when a screaming zombie breaks that silence, it's terrifying. And don't forget about that goddamn laugh. Even the little things, like the perk machine jingles, added to the eeriness. Sure, they were a reminder that you had the chance to power up, but they still felt oddly out of place in the atmosphere. Almost like a false sense of security before the chaos really hits. Now onto my favorite part, the music. You can really tell by the music that Treyarch loved their game. From the iconic menu theme, which perfectly sets the tone for what's to come, and the hard-hitting music during the moments of high tension. It was clear that Treyarch poured their heart into making the sound design, just as terrifying as the zombies themselves. The mid-round guitar riffs were perfect. There's something about the way the electric guitar kicks in and creates that creepy vibe. It's not just about adding noise, it's about setting a mood. The music wasn't trying to overtake the tension, it was amplifying it. Don't even get me started on the badass Easter egg song.
This has to be the last piece.
I mean, listen to this.
It's kick-ass. Let's do it.
So, even though most of the gameplay had minimal music, Treyarch knew when to turn it on. They used music as a tool to amplify the tension, not drown it out. The rest of the audio, those small, unsettling sounds, did the real heavy lifting, keeping you on the edge of your seat every second you played. Now let's dive into the most important part, what I genuinely believe is the number one reason why old Call of Duties felt so terrifying. Up until now, I've shared some of the core elements like atmosphere, sound design, and yeah, they're essential, but they aren't exactly unique. You see, even the newer zombies have solid sound and decent visuals. So what really sets the older games apart? Well, it's the difficulty. You see, older COD zombies weren't just challenging, they were brutal and unforgiving. This relentless difficulty fed directly into the anxiety and fear you'd experience every single time you loaded into a match. There was nothing easy about these older maps. Weapons were severely limited, progression was slow, and perks were rare and minimal. And let's be honest, the guns themselves weren't exactly powerful. Past a certain round, your weapons might as well have been firing foam darts. Forget about double packing or fancy upgrades. Your best bet at survival was usually just the traps scattered around the map. But here's where things got really scary. The zombies themselves. Back in the older games, zombies were notorious for being glitchy and unpredictable. There's the old double swipe, where you'd be down instantly. Their hitboxes were also inconsistent at best, so you never truly know if you could squeeze past that zombie blocking the doorway. Without Juggernog, survival was basically impossible. And let's not forget about the infamous dog rounds. Those demon dogs were glitchy nightmares. They teleported around, hit you from impossible angles, and would chase you across the map. You didn't just dread these rounds because of the difficulty. I mean, they're one hit, right? You dreaded them because you knew how random and lethal they can be. Now, let me stop you right there. I realize how this can all sound like a bad thing. Glitchy zombies, impossible situations, and frustrating deaths. But here's the twist. That frustration was essential. The glitches, the unpredictability, and the relentless difficulty, it all added up to the feeling of genuine fear. The older games made you feel like you weren't really in control, and honestly, that lack of control is what made them so terrifying. Compare this with modern COD zombies, where you've got gobblegums, double packing, easy maps with escape routes, and wide open spaces. It just makes it a little easier. Sure, modern zombies can still be fun, but it's a different kind of experience. Having so many ways to easily handle the zombies kind of feels like a crutch. You don't feel vulnerable anymore, you don't feel fear. But the older games, you don't have that help, that second chance, no magic power-ups to carry you through the rounds. Your only help was your own skill, your instinct, and lots of luck. And that's precisely why they felt so scary. Every round was a test, and every decision felt like life or death. So in the end, the real difference, the reason old zombies felt genuinely terrifying, is because of how little control you actually had. The glitches, the randomness, and the crushing difficulty weren't just game mechanics. They were the very essence of fear itself.